Hi and welcome to the second video in the daily video diaries or vlogs I'm going to be doing. Fucking hell. Hello there and welcome to the second of the daily video diaries I'm going to be doing throughout the duration of our Lexical Lab summer school. Today I was working on the second day of our 2-week flagship Teaching Lexically course, which is much more of a methodology course really, and kind of builds on and explores and workshops a lot of the ideas that we look at in our Teaching Lexically book, published by Delta Publishing. And today we were really looking at what we do as teachers when we're going through vocabulary exercises and the kinds of questions we might ask and the kinds of examples that we might come up with and might add as we're going through the answers to kind of layer and amplify students' experience of and exposure to the new language that they're looking at in action, or to explore some of the connected language that might often be used with the words that we're looking at or with the words that appear in a vocabulary exercise. And one of the interesting things that came up really was how difficult it sometimes is to access an expression or access what we actually do with a particular piece of language in our day-to-day lives. So we looked at a vocabulary exercise connected to work and imagined that we were running through it. And one of the bits of vocabulary was well paid. Okay, the sentence was, it's not very well paid. And we talked about how you might elicit the answer and say, so number 2, it's not very well paid. Good. You could ask the students, what's the opposite of well paid? Badly paid. You could ask the students, can you think of any jobs that are very well paid? Can you think of any jobs that are very badly paid? And those kinds of questions are obviously useful because they involve the students in a kind of co-construction of meaning, and they check that the students have grasped the concepts. They allow you to look at the contextual opposite, badly paid, well paid, in this particular kind of situation. What they don't necessarily do is give you a good example. And we were thinking of and talking about some of the kinds of examples that you might want to write up on the board. And we came up with ideas of things like, in my country, being a businessman is very well paid. And I think the problem with these kinds of examples is, whilst they may be true, they're not things that we might often say. I mean, it's just a weird thing to tell somebody. In my country, being a business person is very well paid. Oh, really? In my country too. Fancy that. What about bankers? Are they well paid in your country? Yes, they are. And thinking about what you might actually say, using the word well paid in order to give an example of possible usage for students is a bit harder, I think. And it requires just, maybe thinking about what do you say in your own first language using these kinds of things. Maybe going to dictionaries, maybe going online and Googling well paid, not very well paid. And then thinking of how to add something like, for example, what do you do? I'm a teacher. Do you enjoy it? Yeah, I do. I love it. It's not very well paid, but I find it very rewarding. I love seeing my students make good progress, or I love helping my students. And just thinking of something like that, where a way of thinking about how you might actually use the new piece of language in a little mini conversation, and thinking about how you can maybe get that little mini conversation on the board so that they've got an extra example as you're going through the answers, I think is tricky and requires practice, but is a very fruitful, very useful kind of thing to do.